Hey guys, it's me, The Rock. My new movie, Black Adam, is out now. I can't wait to watch my favorite critic, Walter White's review of my new movie. Let's go.
Hello guys, welcome to Walter White Reviews. Today I will be reviewing Black Adam. It is the greatest movie of all time. Wow! Is what I would say if I was taking meth. I would rather get lung cancer on my balls than watch this movie again.
I've had enough of this. Who is knocking the door, yo?
My name is Skylar White, yo. My husband is Walter White, yo. Uh-huh.
Microsoft reportedly regretted missing out on making Genshin Impact an Xbox exclusive. Microsoft wants to bring more Chinese games to Xbox after missing out on Genshin Impact's success.
Regen some fucking stuff at tomorrow, bro.
TV, so I don't know what it's gonna look like necessarily. Wait, zoom back so you can see all the lights. Alright, so look, this is not a flashbang. Look, I'm gonna flashbang myself again. I'm gonna close my eyes. Alright.
Throwing flashbang.
So the lights go off. And then basically, you have two 4,000 lumen scene in this POV. So I don't know what it's gonna look like necessarily. Wait, zoom back so you can see all the lights. Alright, so look, this is not a flashbang. Look, I'm gonna flashbang myself again. I'm gonna close my eyes. Alright.
XQCL.
Throwing flashbang.
So the lights go off.
Deadass, deadass, deadass,
And then
deadass, deadass.
basically,
Grim, you have back pockets, right? Me? Hold on, let me check. Hold on. Hold on, back pockets? Where? Where would I have back pockets? I don't know. I don't think so. Hold on, I'm checking still. Where are they? Where? Where are the back pockets? Haha. Do I have them? I don't know, guys. Can you tell? I know, right? I don't know.
Welcome, friends and foes, survivors and killers. Let's sit around the campfire together and talk about Dead by Daylight. Specifically, a question that's become increasingly prominent as of late. What the hell is wrong with solo queue? In life, it is said there are always three certainties. Death, taxes, and teammates who've had their brain cells confiscated always ending up on your team. And Dead by Daylight is no exception to this rule. I'm sure anyone here who's ever played Survivor will have had at least a couple of matches where teams just do the most questionable shit a human being could possibly conceive of and get everyone killed. Which is why from as soon as it was introduced, the Survive with Friends feature remains one of Dead by Daylight's most prized post-launch features, and to many, its most controversial. I first got into the game in early 2018, but I was aware of the game and conscious of its community long before then. I don't think DBD's had an issue that's been more hotly contested over a longer period of time than voice comms. While DBD doesn't have any comms systems in-game, Survive with Friends groups will often communicate with each other through third-party programs like Discord. For as long as I can remember, this has drawn ire from certain niche figures in the killer main community who believe the use of voice comms is cheating, as it uses third-party software to accrue an advantage that the base game does not accommodate. They'll say that Survive with Friends breaks the game's balance completely, and the feature should be removed if behaviour can't police the use of external voice comms. To those people, I have two things to say. 1, please go outside. And 2, if it was such a heinous crime, you'd think that things like the Community Cup behaviours drafting up, and every other tournament behaviour themselves has ever tried to host, would try policing those programs. But they haven't. Despite how absolutely had-ass these complaints are, the complainants tend to get exactly one thing right. The difference between a Survivor team effectively using voice comms and a team who isn't is like night and day. Even something as simple as telling your friend on a generator across the map, "I'm going for the unhooked, stick your gen," can save so much time that we spent wandering across the map instead of sticking on a generator. It can really be the difference between completing a generator and being forced off it. And that's to say nothing of the more complex communications a team can pull off, like sharing perk info so a team can play around, say, a Deliverance or Unbreakable, giving callouts to allow the team to keep track of a stealth killer, or coordinating exit gates to ensure a save against a killer camping in the endgame. These are all things that solo queue players can hypothetically work around, often by dedicating perks to info like Bond or Kindred, but become far smoother with clear voice comms and free up perk slots on a team. This creates an issue for behaviour's balancing of the game, where they have to make Dead by Daylight as fair as they can both for solo queue players and players on full comms. They need to make solo queue able to stand a decent chance without allowing Survive with Friends teams to dominate. In patch 6.1.0, behaviour attempted to massively overhaul both the core game of Dead by Daylight and the perks that survivors and killers relied on most commonly, what we would call as the meta perks. We saw significant buffs to the base kit killer baked into the game, such as an increase in the time it takes to complete a generator and increased hit recovery and pallet break speed, which seem to be targeted at making weaker killers more viable without relying on very powerful perks. Survivors also got a fair bit of base kit changes though, most notably a base kit version of the very powerful Survivor perk Borrowed Time, giving them 5 seconds of endurance and 7% haste upon being unhooked, a timer that would later be doubled to 10 seconds and would stack with Borrowed Time. You might think such a big buff would make solo queue easier, right? Now being farmed off hook isn't a guaranteed death sentence if the teammate unhooking you doesn't have BT. And the freshly buffed Off the Record was a better anti-tunneling perk than Decisive Strike, since it worked off of both hooks, so you can effectively give yourself super BT if you're really worried about that. And yet, once the update actually arrived, and then again once Wesker arrived in the next chapter, there were many complaints from Survivor players that the solo queue experience was somehow much worse than before, with many players going as far as suggesting the entire patch get reverted. While I do believe there's a level of throwing one's toys out the pram, especially with regards to the thoroughly well-deserved nerf to Dead Hard, I don't think it's fair to assume bad intentions for the overwhelming majority of players. So I've been taking a little look as to why exactly the solo queue experience feels worse than it's ever done before. To be blunt, I don't think there's a single reason to blame for it, so I'm going to split this video up into 3 segments. The designs of new killer powers, the slowdown perks that killers incentivized to use after 6.1.0 arrived, and the various external factors that change how killers play to worsen the solo queue experience. We'll also be talking about how behaviour has been addressing these issues and whether they're doing the right thing to do so. Let's start by talking about powers. Because I've noticed a bit of a trend lately with behaviours power designs, and that trend is complexity. By that, I don't mean new powers becoming more complex to use, although there is elements of that. Just powers that have a lot more going on. Like, look at the newest killer, Albert Wesker. He has a chase power, yes, but he also has map mobility by running around, and has a form of passive slowdown with the Ouroboros infection that survivors have to get rid of with first aid sprays. There's just a lot of stuff going on. And even if it's not as good as the sheer power of a killer like Spirit or Nurse, what Wesker gives to survivors is a ton of decisions to make that are very unique to him. I'm not really talking about chase decisions here, because how good you are in chase is something that's dependent on you alone. It has nothing to do with comms or not, because most of the time your chase performance is determined by the two chase participants. I'm talking macro decisions, like when and where should I go and spray myself to get rid of Ouroboros? Should I leave my spray where I found it or take it with me? Can I stick this gen or get this unhook before Wesker's mobility lets him catch up to me? All of these decisions can mean a lot. It can mean the difference between running across the whole map to use a spray you don't need to, or sticking a gen you shouldn't be and getting a tentacle up the jacksie for your troubles. Every time you or a teammate make the wrong call, that inefficiency Wesker's power is adding to your game. And while swift teams do have to make decisions too, they do so with far more information. For example, say the survivor on hook has a spray can with one charge in it, but isn't infected, and you are. You might want to be the person going for that unhook, so you can heal them and then they can spray you, say you're running across the entire map to get your own spray. If you're on comms, you can just say, I'm on hook and holding a spray, unhook me and I'll spray you. But if you're in solo queue, you have no way of knowing that. Meaning there's a good chance you waste your own time running across the map to get a spray instead of unhooking your teammate, or that teammate just running off with their spray can instead of using it on you. This is doubly true since Wesker is the newest killer, and survivors haven't really cottoned on to playing against him properly yet. Meaning without comms, teams have absolutely no way to ensure they're on the same page. Which might be why Wesker's kill rate is so high. A lot of these killers who have more decision points baked into their design typically have higher kill rates, because the more decisions survivors have to make, the higher their chance of getting some of them wrong. And in solo queue, you don't have the information you need to make informed decisions a lot of the time. Look at these new stats. The top 7 killers at all MMRs all have outside of chase mechanics that force survivors to make decisions unique to that killer. Whether that's managing Sadako's tapes, cleansing at a pool of devotion, or waking up at an alarm clock. Dredge especially has the unique honour of being a killer who both creates unique interactions by allowing survivors to lock lockers, and deprives players of information with Nightfall, essentially limiting a solo queue player's capacity to make informed decisions, attached to a killer power who requires you to make unique decisions. But I think the most interesting killer like this is actually one of my personal favourites. The highest performing killer in DBD at all MMRs, Pinhead. Pinhead is a killer with a ton of complexities on both sides. It's one of the reasons I love him so much, honestly. Alongside his chase power, the Possessed Chain, Pinhead comes with the Lament configuration, which is a device survivors have 90 seconds to solve once it spawns, and if they don't, AI-controlled chains will constantly harass the entire team in a chain hunt, slowing gen progress considerably, and making chases with the Cenobite end very quickly. It's meant to slow the game down as survivors are forced off gens to go and solve it. But if the Cenobite interrupts the solve and downs a survivor carrying it, the chain hunt will start immediately and persist until someone else solves the box. The Lament configuration is the definition of a high decision point mechanic for the survivor team for many reasons. It requires exactly one person to solve it, meaning someone has to do it, but at the same time, sending more than one person to do it is wasting time. The person solving the box is oblivious, meaning the Cenobite could be basically touching them ready to attack them and they might not even know it. And the Possessed Chain can be used to interrupt a solve from a decent distance, so solving in the wrong place could easily doom the whole team to a chain hunt. To put it simply, there's a lot of ways survivors can solve the box wrong, and without communication, the odds of solo queue players doing exactly that is probably higher than you'd want. But on top of that, there's another issue that makes Pinhead a complete solo queue destroyer, and that's how unintuitive many of his mechanics are. For example, the passive chains from a chain hunt can interrupt the survivor solving the box, which is pretty bad when it happens, but can easily be avoided by simply dodging a few passive chains before committing to the solve. While preventing this from happening is extremely easy, there's nothing in the game that tells you this. relying on you to either find out from trial and error or to hear it from someone. If you're a more casual player, which solo queue players are more likely to be, there's no way on earth you play against Pinhead enough to know that, potentially giving the Pinhead a free chain hunt because his power works in an unintuitive way. The same goes for breaking chains near a pallet. If you're on console, the button to vault a pallet and break a chain is the same, meaning there's a good chance the survivors will just vault a pallet directly into the Pinhead while trying to break the chain. You can mitigate this by changing your key bindings, but again, that requires you to know to do that. Information casual players will often not be privy to until it's too late. Despite being a very fair killer on paper, Pinhead can be punishing for a lot of survivors in practice, because his mechanics are so unintuitive and very punishing to survivor misplays, which will naturally happen more in solo queue. Pinhead isn't the only killer who benefits from depriving survivors of information. Stealth killers as a collective do this as part of their power budget, and trap killers do too. By making themselves or their traps harder to detect, their whole thing is catching people by surprise, and that's far easier to do when the information and therefore the agency to play around them is mitigated by the lack of comms. This even extends to killers who are paralytically niche like twins, who function in a very different way to every other killer in the game, and despite being out for almost 2 years now, are so chronically underplayed that very few survivors know how to really use those counters, especially in solo queue. By creating killer powers that give survivors decisions to make throughout the course of the game, solo queue will be disproportionately affected by the consequences of players making the wrong ones. In my opinion, that isn't inherently a bad thing, because the alternative to killer powers giving survivors decisions to make outside of chase is to make killer powers that only do anything in chase. And we all know how much everyone loves killers like Deathslinger and Spirit and Trickster, who only impact the game by ending chases as fast as humanly possible. And as long as what survivors actually have to do is intuitive, like removing a reverse bear trap, and isn't hidden behind a web of mysterious behaviour spaghetti code like the Lament configuration, I think these power elements are very healthy for the game overall, because when implemented properly, they allow for a killer to be able to impact the match in many different ways, without being overbearing in a single one. But that being said, the ramifications of that power design on solo queue players cannot be ignored, and I'll be talking more about solutions to that problem later. But a decent part of this is just, players have to learn the macro play against these killers. If they're a new killer, they might not have that information yet, but you can't engineer away people making a dumb play. It's not possible. We've covered killer powers, so let's talk now about killer perks. Specifically the kind of perks behaviour has encouraged killers to run as of the recent perk updates. The Great Perk Update brought with it changes to many of the meta slowdown perks killers are running frequently. Most notably nerfs to Hex Ruin, Pop Goes the Weasel, Dead Man Switch, and Corrupt Intervention, alongside buffs to Overcharge, Eruption, and Surge, as well as minor increases in the efficiency of kicking gens without perks. This was all done in an attempt to diversify the meta and encourage new perks being used, which I guess it succeeded at. Corrupt nerf was by far the best implemented, as it's still a pretty damn good perk, despite getting hit pretty hard. But, Ruin and Pop are not good perks now. Ruin took the biggest hit, with the gen regression it gives being halved on top of the totem self-destructing once a survivor is killed, meaning it's even more unstable than a regular Hex, for an effect that's just not really worth that risk. Pop got off a little lighter, but making the perk scale with percentage current progression instead of percentage max regression absolutely killed the perk's usefulness, by making your Pop worth the time spent to apply it significantly less frequently. DMS is kinda special, so we'll talk about that in more detail later, but something that Pop, Ruin, and DMS all have in common, I think contributes to part of the issue with solo queue. They're all perks that either require the killer to actively play well to get value, or that the survivors can get rid of. Pop requires you to get a hook, get to the generator that's worth popping, and then kick it to get your pop. And while Ruin doesn't have that requirement, it does require the killer to actively pressure you off half-completed generators and keep you off totems. Both of them have clear weaknesses. If you go down far from the generator the killer wants to pop, or just don't go down for as long as you can, Pop gets much weaker, and the Ruin totem can be broken. Thus, these perks are powerful but ultimately have clear counterplay, and their effectiveness scales with how well the killer is playing, for the most part anyway. Let's compare them to the perks that have become meta after the Great Perk Update. The only perk that has stayed meta on both sides of the changes is Pain Resonance. another perk in the category of earned perks similar to Pop. And with the buffs to Eruption and Surge, both perks trigger when the killer gets a down, you might think this has kept killer perks in a relatively healthy state. But that's not entirely true. And the key to understanding why is a little perk that didn't get buffed or nerfed during the Great Perk Update, that went from being totally unused to becoming a staple of basically every killer build. Call of Brine. Crucially, this perk does not have an activation condition beyond just kicking a generator, and it causes that gen to regress at double speed, aka Old Ruin speed, while giving you information when someone passes a skill check on that generator. It got overlooked when it first came out because it didn't synergize well with the gen perks at the time, since Ruin stopped you from kicking generators and Pop took a big chunk of progress out at once, leaving little time for Call of Brine to get its effect going. But now, between Ruin and Pop being fired into space, and Eruption and Overcharge getting buffed, there were now excellent reasons to be kicking gens without Pop, and the perks that discouraged you from doing so weren't worth running anymore. Call of Brine and other gen kick perks that synergize with it are everywhere these days, and that presents a serious issue for solo queue players, because while those perks weren't strictly as powerful as, say, old Pop builds or old Ruin builds, Call of Brine builds are both easier to use for killers who aren't playing well, and harder to play against for survivors who don't have comms on. An individual player can turn off Ruin completely if they really want to, and the performance of an individual player looping well can mitigate the impact of Pop. But the counterplay to Call of Brine is a little bit more involved than that for the whole team. To stop Call of Brine being effective, the best thing a team can do is have one person take over a kick generator as soon as possible, and to keep that up as frequently as possible to ensure minimal progress is lost. What that requires is coordination. The team needs to be working together so that if one person gets chased off a generator that gets kicked, someone else can take it over and tap it before the regression gets too much to bear. Same goes for the freshly buffed Overcharge, and if you add Eruption to the mix it gets extra spicy because now working on a generator that got called could get you incapacitated for 25 seconds if your teammate isn't calling out exactly when they're about to go down. Again, this is something that Swifts can adapt to limit the effectiveness of a perk like Eruption, but solo players can't do that. You've got a lot more control and info over when you go down than when and where your teammates go down. And don't forget the passive slowdown perks that didn't get changed. Deadlock and No Way Out. So between the gen kick builds and the passive slowdown builds, there's a level of interaction that Ruin and Pop provided that these perks often mostly don't. They just make the game go longer, with little or even nothing solo players can do to mitigate the effectiveness of those perks. The combo of Pain Resonance and Dead Man's Switch draws a lot of ire for a similar reason. Individually, it's very easy to play around, just get off the gen when you see the hook aura and you'll be fine. But sufficiently stupid players in solo queue will just stick gens next to you and get them blocked by Deadmans, which is irritating if you're working on it as well. I think unlike the dry kick problem, this is absolutely a skill issue. It's a very reasonable thing to expect even solo queue players to be doing to pay attention to hook auras. But that's kind of irrelevant because stupid players don't do it and punish the rest of their team for their idiocy. While I don't think the two interacting in the way that they do is bad design, it undeniably hurts the solo queue experience as a consequence of its existence. And unfortunately, Pain Res and DMS are the only earned regression perks that behaviour has allowed to be good these days. Whether we like it or not, the meta has shifted mostly away from earned gen regression perks like Pop, and in favour of less skill expressive and obviously counterable regression that's more consistent regardless of how well the killer is playing. The design that Call of Brine and the strength of the perk synergies with it have had a pretty disastrous effect on solo queue players, and Pop and Ruin being beaten to death with a welding mallet has meant that aside from Pain Resonance and maybe Jolt on the right killer, the option to run a more interactable slowdown suite doesn't really exist anymore. Which brings me on to the next factor that's making solo queue pretty unpleasant. External issues that are forcing killers to play in ways that hurt solo queuers more than Swifts. And when I mean that, I'm talking about two things: maps and survivor perks. Let's start with maps. And I don't think it's a controversial thing to say that maps in DBD aren't terribly well designed on the whole. You'd think after 6 years of making maps that behaviour would actually start to get better at it, but recent evidence indicates that's not the case at all. Looking back at the maps and map reworks in the past year, we've had Eyrie of Crows, Garden of Joy, and the reworks to RPD in Haddonfield. And you know DBD map designers are on something strong when the best map they made in that time was probably Eyrie of Crows, a map that's basically the pre-rework Ormond your mum says you have at home. And it really doesn't help that whenever one of these new or reworked maps comes out, and their presence in the map seedings spikes dramatically for a couple of weeks, meaning killers who wanted to play the new content when Project W came out had to play on almost nothing but RPD for 2 weeks. I gotta tell you, I've never played less DBD than I did during those 2 weeks. Every time a new map gets added to DBD's map pool, it increases the chances of a killer ending up somewhere that's just horrible. And what happens when a killer ends up on a shitty map? Especially if a survivor sent them there with a map offering? They are going to camp, they are going to tunnel, and if it happens a lot, they're going to bring stronger builds because no matter how well you play, you don't win games playing Clown on Garden of Joy without some strong perks or bad survivors. This creates a bit of an arms race of strong builds and offerings, one which solo queue players will invariably lose. They don't have the communication to effectively abuse very strong maps like Badham or Haddonfield, and killers resorting to camping and tunnelling disproportionately affects them for the inefficiency reasons I talked about earlier. This brings me on to the last thing I want to talk about, survivors themselves, and how survivor perks have changed in ways that have been detrimental to solo queue. Similar to how I think the regression perk changes in the Great Perk Update kinda made the problem worse, I believe the anti-tunnelling perk changes that patch brought have caused more problems than they solved. Yeah baby, it's time to talk about off the record and decisive strike. Ah DS, how the mighty have fallen. Once the scourge of killer players for years, DS has now become a perk you just don't see anymore, due to its change in 6.1.0. That patch changed DS to function around the inconspicuous action mechanic, that turns the perk off if you contribute to the objectives in any way, and in the end game once the gens are done. And to top it off, the stun duration got decreased from 5 seconds to 3. To replace it as an anti-tunnelling perk, the devs changed off the record to give a survivor 80 seconds of endurance upon being unhooked, basically making a super long BT to go along with a 10-second endurance added to the base kit. This sounds pretty good on paper. DS could only be used once, whereas off the record worked off both hooks. But there's an issue with the way the two perks work that means despite off the record seeming stronger on paper, I believe it's actually the worst of the two at deterring tunnelling from a design perspective. If a killer hits you off hook with Decisive Strike, you'll just take the hit on your base kit endurance or BT, and then the killer has to actually chase you, down you, and make a choice. Do they pick you up and potentially eat a DS, or slug you until your DS times out? Whatever they choose to do, the threat of DS means they had to play a bit differently. So a lot of killers just won't tunnel at all because of the threat of DS pushing them off their plan. That threat was much stronger back when everyone ran DS, because you didn't know if somebody had DS or not. So a player who didn't run it was kind of protected by it anyway, because the threat of the stun was the deterrent whether or not you actually had the perk. Off the record does not work that way. If the killer hits you off hook, off the record may as well do nothing at all, because you'll just take the hit on your BT or base kit endurance, and now the killer can tunnel you without consequence, as if you didn't even put the perk on. Off the record's better at combating incidental tunnelling, where the killer might hit the unhooker or force a 1-for-1, and then go for the person who got off the hook. But if they're tunnelling straight off hook, off the record doesn't really do anything at all. And nobody runs DS anymore because of the nerf for the stun duration stopping the perk being deterrent against many of DBD's most popular killers. Reducing the stun to 3 seconds, about one of which is spent getting off the killer's shoulder in the first place, means precisely nothing to a lot of killers. Nurse and Blake can catch up to you immediately, and so can the new killer Wesker. And in the month of September, those 3 killers alone represented over a third of all matches of Dead by Daylight at high MMR. That's not to mention killers who slow your movement like Pinhead or Clown, ranged killers like Huntress or Deathslinger, or killers with catch-up tools like Spirit or Wraith. All of these killers benefit from DS's stun time nerf, and as such DS have become less of a discouragement from tunnelling, meaning fewer people run it, making the threat of it basically impotent. Without the threat of DS, tunnelling becomes more prevalent. And while it does affect everyone, the lack of coordination on gens and reduced effectiveness of body blocking does make this affect solo queue harder than Swifts. But that isn't the only issue caused by the fall of DS and the rise of off the record as DBD's premier anti-tunnelling perk. Just like how the nerfs to Ruin and Pop caused the birth of one of DBD's most unhealthy gen control metas by basically removing any alternatives, the rise of aura blocker perks has also pushed killers away from running anything that isn't stacked slowdown, especially dry kick related perks like Call of Brine. Now that Iron Will got nerfed and survivors that don't know how to use Dead Hard actually have consequences of being injured, Circle of Healing is back in every game again, making any other boon that works with it inherently better. The obvious synergy perk here being Shadow Step. Between Shadow Step blocking auras from potentially a whole team by using a single perk, Distortion now regenerating tokens in Chase for some bizarre reason, and Off the Record being a powerful anti-tunneling perk that everyone's running anyway that just so happens to block aura reading for 80 seconds, which, unlike the Endurance, does not turn off on conspicuous actions. Aura blocker perks have never been this prevalent or this powerful. Don't get me wrong, I definitely see the appeal of aura blockers, especially for solo players. Distortion in particular helps you figure out the killer's perks if you pay attention to when you lose tokens. That's a really neat piece of utility if you're playing without comms to help call them out. But it's important to remember the flip side of this. If aura blocker perks become more common, and it's safe to say they have, killers are going to notice that their barbecue or floods of rage aren't doing as much as they used to, and likely change their builds accordingly. When stealth perks are situational at best, anti-healing perks do very little in the face of incredibly powerful healing perks and medkits, info perks become unreliable, and chase perks don't work well on about half the killer roster, what do you expect killers to run other than slowdown perks? And this hurts solo players harder than anybody else for all the reasons I talked about before. The dry kick perks are problematic on their own, and a lot of killers would run them anyway, but the proliferation of hard counters to aura reading perks has only made bigger slowdown suites more attractive. So far I've covered killer power design, killer and survivor perk design, and even maps during our exhaustive breakdown. This kind of stuff has always been an issue, even if various design decisions have caused these problems to get worse over time. But I truly think one of the biggest thorns in the side of solo queue players isn't anything to do with DBD's balance or design choices, but instead a symptom of its success. Dead by Daylight has recently had a big jump in its player count, after it sagged a bit between the Hour of the Witch release last year and the Ringu chapter at the start of this year. And while this nothing burger of a mid-chapter has caused it to settle down again, it's still a game that's growing overall and taking on new players at a much higher rate than it used to. This might be down to a couple of things. DBD's recent spree of non-horror brand integrations like For Honor, Attack on Titan, and most recently PUBG might have something to do with it. And it certainly doesn't hurt that we've just had the 6th anniversary, a massive licensed chapter, and the best Halloween event in the game's history, back to back to back. All of these things have contributed to an influx of newcomers. An influx who will inevitably be in our solo queue matches at some point. Yes, the megheads we are all worried would go extinct when MMR hit are back with a vengeance. Urban evading in the corners of the map while you go to second stage, and avoiding gens like they're covered in fire ants. And it's important to remember that unlike gameplay related stuff, you can't really engineer away inexperience, or people just making dumb plays. No amount of solo queue features can control for the human factor that people are just gonna be stupid sometimes. It's a common thread in every team-based multiplayer game that developers physically cannot solve. Look at a game like Evil Dead. That game has every solo queue feature it is possible to give to survivors. A constant supply of information to the whole team, full voice comms, a solid tutorial, AI matches, and solo missions you can do to get yourself into the swing of the game without committing to a full public match. And solo queuing in that game is still horrible. I'd say possibly even worse than DBD is, because it's a complex game that will always have a sharp learning curve. DBD is no different, and it only gets more complex with every new mechanic or killer or perk or map that the game gets every quarter. But while you can't control for human error, there's a lot that you can do to improve the experience for the solo queue community. So now we've diagnosed the problem, let's look and see what behaviour has in mind for curing it. Back in January of this year, a developer update by Behaviour showcased plans for information improvement for solo queue, and they looked really promising. Info on the HUD showing what your teammates are doing would be a fantastic boon to solo queue players, even if it just means less players being left a second, or unnecessary hook parties with nobody on gens. This was a feature I was really hoping we'd see this year, but we don't seem to be getting it, at least not as far as we know. What's coming instead is the base kit recovery and Mori system, which, suffice to say, goes really far in the other direction. I've gone on record saying the system benefits top tier killers and players who tunnel to take advantage of the finisher Mori system, along with survivor teams to create lose-lose situations under pallet or unhookable builds to effectively hold games hostage if sufficiently coordinated. This game of turbo tunneling killers and unhookable bully squads, sorry I can't say that too loudly, or DB Twitter is gonna fucking murder me, Doesn't sound like a hospitable landscape for the solo queue Andy, and if this is behaviour's intended improvement for solo queue, then they're going about it completely the wrong way. If you ask me, the healthiest thing behaviour could do to solo queue would be those base kit info improvements, and I wish the time spent on the Mori changes was spent getting that system operational instead, because we've never needed it more. In addition, I'd love behaviour to look properly into the health of current regression and tunnelling perks and really assess how healthy the game is with Call of Brine, Overcharge and Off the Record, taking the thrones of Ruin, Pop and Decisive Strike. It would be interesting to see what the game would look like if some power was taken from Off the Record and moved back to DS, so survivors might run it again, and potentially have it deterring killers from tunnelling once more. And at the same time, I think many people would agree with me that moving power back to perks like Ruin and Pop would leave the game in a healthier state overall for solo queuers than leaving Call of Brine as the king of the hill. I really want to see buffs to Ruin and Pop, a nerf to Call of Brine, another rework to Overcharge because that perk design is just kind of fucked, and a side grade to Eruption with the revert incapacitated duration but remove the cooldown instead, because I don't know why it even has one, and it was kinda mid before the buff anyway. Oh, and maybe change Dead Man Switch from 30 seconds after a hook to 45 after an unhook. So it might actually have uses on killers that aren't artists, and doesn't combo with Pain Resonance by making solo queue Andys block the generator and give the killer a free deadlock. If the solo queue info gap is addressed and the health of gen regression and tunnelling perks are given a quick rain check to make coordination less of a requirement to play around them, I think DBD solo queue would be in a fantastic spot, especially with the base kit BT. And between you and me, that's probably all they could realistically do without causing far more damage than they would solve. I mean, you could definitely try to address the issue of solo queue survivors not understanding killer powers by making killers with more simple and linear power designs, but adding complexity to powers is much of what makes DBD's newer killer design so impressive, and it's key to keeping the game fresh. While the platform-related issues similar to the ones that Pinhead causes can't really be justified, overall mechanics like Ouroboros Infection, Condemnation and the Lament configuration add more to the game than they take away, and cutting back on them, regressing back to the Stone Age because survivors can't leave the fucking tape alone, is exactly how a game stagnates. Pinhead, Dredge, Wesker and Sadako were all new killers who brought great new mechanics to the game, and I wouldn't trade them for the world. The solo queue gap is an issue that cannot be fixed, at least not entirely. But that doesn't justify ignoring it, or even actively making it worse like behaviour's been doing these past few updates. The new kill rate stats dropped, showing that the kill rates right now are very close to behaviour's desired kill rates. But that doesn't necessarily mean the game is in the healthiest spot it could be in. Don't get me wrong, a lot of good stuff has been done with regards to perks like Dead Hard and general M1 killer buffs, but we still have a long way to go. I just hope, as I'm sure a great many of this video's viewers do, that the next step forward behaviour has planned for solo queue doesn't come with 2 steps back. Well, that's my exhaustive and collected thoughts on DBD solo queue. What do you think? Am I misdiagnosing the issue? Am I missing something very important? Or do you think I've nailed it? Regardless, let me know what you think in the comments. But down there, do feel
Who that?
These are not good blindfolds. I don't think. I was thinking they were gonna be like a.
What's up?
Like a sheet.
What's good? What's up with y'all? You know
Don't peek.
I'm not gonna peek. I'm not gonna peek. Shake my hand. Shake my hand.
Wait, so who's my date?
Wait. We're not doing it yet, okay?
Okay.
Natural, you know what I'm saying? Whoever finds whoever attractive. That's what we're gonna do.
Yeah, but y'all can't tell because we got blindfolds on right now.
So she shake my hand, you know what I'm saying? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Shake both of their hands first.
Keep it warm though.
Alright, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm Venus.
Yeah, that's the ugly one.
Oh.
Hey,
None of us here are ugly.
No. He's talking about Messi the ugly
Right,
one.
Messi, bro, because Messi be pissing me off,
Yeah,
bro.
it's
Messi stay pissing me off.
It's okay.
No, I'm talking about Messi, bro.
Nice to meet you.
Damn.
What's her name?
Wait, what's her name?
Her name's Mariah, right?
I can go for Mariah.
Okay.
Hold on, what's your name, shorty?
You guys can call me Grin. It's like a smile.
Grant?
Okay, that's a nice name.
Grant?
Nice
Grin
name.
is like a smile.
Oh my God, beautiful name.
Beautiful name.
Yeah.
But look
So you
though,
want
let's
it again?
Beautiful name.
花車が揺らぎ、ナヒーダは目を開ける。そして言う。夢を見ていたと。ナヒーダの誕生日は今日なのだと。夢の中で花の騎士や従者が彼女を見つけた。神よ、やっと見つけました。皆お会いできるのを楽しみにしています。家臣誕祭が幕を開け、人々は彼女を囲んで楽しく踊る。花車の上でナヒーダがみんなに手を振りながらさよならを言うまで。花車が揺らぎ、ナヒーダは目を開ける。彼女は言う。夢を見ていたと。ナヒーダの誕生日は今日なのだと。夢の中で花の騎士や従者が彼女を見つけた。神よ、やっと見つけました。皆お会いできるのを楽しみにしています。家臣誕祭が幕を開け、人々は彼女を囲んで楽しく踊る。花車の上でナヒーダがみんなに手を振りながらさよならを言うまで。花車が揺らぎ、ナヒーダは目を開ける。そして言う。夢を見ていたと。ナヒーダの誕生日は今日なのだと。夢の中で花の騎士や従者が彼女を見つけた。神よ、やっと見つけました。皆お会いできるのを楽しみにしています。家臣誕祭が幕を開け、人々は彼女を囲んで楽しく踊る。花車の上でナヒーダがみんなに手を振りながらさよならを言うまで。花車が揺らぎ、ナヒーダは目を開ける。そして言う。ナヒーダの誕生日は今日なのだと。お誕生日おめでとう、ナヒーダ。
Here's the Soundman Great deck type breakdown. This is not my exact deck list. You'll be seeing that in a bit. Here's the top extra deck and all that good stuff. I was talking to Twitch chat about what I call the point system when making combos. One of the best combos with Soundman Great is to have a wolf plus the counter trap plus a heat soul. You're drawing every turn. You got Omni Negate recycling. It's insane. Now, what's the point system? The points represent how many summons I could perform in one turn. If I could perform 2 summons, that's 2 points. And if it's with Gazelle, I could make Wolf plus Counter Trap. If I could perform 4 summons, that's going to be Wolf, Counter Trap, and the Heat Soul. If you look at my hand, how many summons can I perform? I could perform a normal summon. I could perform, the Gazelle could send a monster from the deck to the graveyard, which is another summon, but then I lose the counter trap. So with Gazelle, if Gazelle is just an additional special summon, Jack Jaguar, additional special summon, the Fox, additional special summon, plus my normal summon. This is a 4-point hand with Gazelle being able to send the counter trap. If it sent a monster, it would be a 5-point hand, but we're not making a 5-point combo. We're doing a 4-point combo, 4 summons. Let's go. So let's execute summon number 1. So we have 3 more points to execute to perform the combo. We got the Bale Links triggering the Gazelle off of the monster being sent from the field to the graveyard. Anywhere the Soundman Great's being sent to the graveyard is going to activate. Gazelle sending the counter trap. Very good. That's going to be for the Omni Negate. We got Sun, Light, Wolf with the field spell to summon a wolf over the wolf. The field spell with the Foxy, very good. Most of your Salamangreat cards are dependent on a Salamangreat being on the field. Foxy is independent. If there's a face-up card anywhere on the field that's a spell or trap, Foxy could be summoned by discarding a Salamangreat, not requiring a Salamangreat on the field. Jack Jaguar requires a Salamangreat link. The Spinny requires a Salamangreat monster. We're going to link this off into the Wolf. Wolf is now going to be adding the counter trap from the graveyard back to the hand. We now got our Omni Negate. Now we need to perform our fourth and final summon. Just like that, with 2 cards, you can make the Heat Soul. Want to add back the Gazelle by summoning the monster to where the Wolf is pointing to. Splash Mage into the Heat Soul. Heat Soul requires Cyberse monsters, and they must be different attributes. Every single one of them. If you use 3 monsters, that's 3 different attributes to summon this. Very difficult because this whole deck is fire. So by summoning this with the Splash Mage, it's perfect. 2 card, 2 different attributes. Let's go. Draw a card every single turn, drawing into the Called by the Grave. Damn. We got Roar. You do want to draw during their draw phase. Double Effect Veiler. It's not hard once per turn. So the Heat Soul gave us Called by the Grave, gave us another Veiler, and we're drawing every single turn. There's no way you're going to be able to play through this. The hand traps, the draws are endless. We got the counter trap with it. He's going to try to fuse with our field. I'm going to Veil. He's going to chain Call by the Grave. I'm going to Veil again. I don't think so, man. He's going to Call by the Grave. I'm going to chain Link 6. Negate. I don't think so, mate. And it's all thanks to the Heat Soul. Heat Soul gave us the other Veiler. Heat Soul gave us the Call by the Grave. The Heat Soul advantage is insane. This is what you want to do turn 1. If not Heat Soul, you could try to make a Baguska, which is harder to do to get the 2 level 4s in the field instead. Woohoo! Our turn, draw again. Their turn, draw again. So if you're playing against a control matchup, let's say an Eldritch deck, you're drawing every turn if they don't deal with the Heat Soul.
There can only be one winner, and you're looking at it. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm not going to Ash Blossom that. That's a debate. I'm going to Ash this. I think it's a good Ash. It's a good Ash. I think so, but it's not going to stop him. Let's go, full power. We good. He has the quick effect to pop a card, draw a card. It's got back row, probably hand traps. Let's do it. Now, if you remember the first duel, I talked about a point system, the points representing how many summons. If you are going turn 2 with Salamangreat, 3 points equals Axis Code Talker, 5,000 damage twice, wipe the field, and deal 10,000 damage. We could do 3 summons. We have normal summon, special summon, and we have some extension to play through hand traps. Gonna grab Gazelle. Side net mining. Discard the Foxy. We still got the 3 summons. We have normal Spinny, and special Gazelle. That's still 10,000 damage lethal. We're good. We're fine. I'm baiting the back row, baiting the hand traps. Even better, we got Buffalo to maybe grab more advantage. He's going to be drawing off of that. That's going to be annoying. We're going to come forth and summon Gazelle. Get Gazelle in. Come forth. And you let me know if the point system's making sense to you. Effect Veiler. Well, did I need the Gazelle? I did not. Spinny has 2 points, and this is a special summon, because this is going to be a normal summon, a summon. So we're baiting so much extra effects. We don't even need it. We didn't need that. Did not need it. That's 2 summons on the field. Spinny would be the 3rd for our 10,000 damage lethal. We baited so much back row activation. We got him. Buffer low, discard the Spinny, draw 2. I like to chain link block it with the Spinny. Negate again. We're baiting everything. I don't even need that. I do not need that. Now, what could Buffalo be drawn into? Come to me, discard, draw 2. Trash. Okay, not usable. But that's okay. Now we got 3 monsters, 3 summons, and it's over. To make the update jammer, it has to be level 2 or higher Cybers, so you cannot make this with Link monsters. You could make it with Heat Soul. If you're at 3,000 life or lower, activate Heat Soul, then it summons update jammer, but we're not doing that. And then you make Transcode Talker. Burn me again. I think in the TCG, tracking the 200 every summon, that's really annoying, isn't it? Transcode Talker, summoning the update jammer. Right now, we are untargetable. Come forth and Shokan, Access Code Talker. This is with this toggle on. He wants to activate to pop my access code talker. A very good play on the resolution. You can't change to it. You need your toggle on. Otherwise, it's not possible to respond to the access code talker. And just like that, Sonny is off the field, called by the grave, and we got double attack mate. Let's go. He knows it. Double attack lethal, playing through all the hand traps, continually making sure that I have my 3 summons and just bait the extra stuff. Bait the extra. Every play I make, I ensured I had my 3 summons to make my lethal. Alrighty, so you now know the point system that I've revealed to you. The biggest secret that top players don't want you to know is now what do you do with a 4-point hand? 3-point hand is transcode into the access code talker with the update jammer. But with the access code talker on the field, after you clear out their field, you can get hit by an impermanence sometimes, and that's totally not cool. So if they're saving their impermanence for an access code talker, maybe you're under the max speed challenge, they just draw into that impermanence. What could you do? So what I want to do is I want to summon Foxy, special Spinny, special Jack Jaguar. That's 4 points to do an extension of what we would normally do. So it's very important that we do not activate the effect of Foxy because then we can't summon the other effect. So we're going to now link this off into the Bale links. Get Bale linksing. The Foxy is also going to be discarding the Jack Jaguar. That's going to be very important. Let's grab the field spell here. And the Foxy cannot activate because we have no face-up spell and traps on the field. Even the opponent, if they have one, we can activate the Foxy. It even gets rid of skill drain. Very good. Now, we could Foxy, discard the Jack. Jack to the graveyard, come forth and summon. Do not destroy your field spell. You're going to say no thank you. I'm going to put Bale links over here so I can summon the Jack Jaguar. All right. Jack Jaguar, come forth and summon. Very good. Target, return. And now we just need to summon the Spinny, which is not going to be difficult to do. We're going to make a Splash Mage. Get splashing. Splash Mage over here. And we're going to activate the Splash Mage, summoning the Jack Jaguar. Now, this is our last chance to get spinning because I'm going to be summoning non-Salamangrates. So let's get spinning, spin up any of these. I don't really care. And then we're going to spin ourselves onto the fields. Perfect. Now, we're going to update Jam. This is a 4-point play. Normally, it's a 3-point play. And this is where you would just transcode lethal with update Jammer. But what if you could make the play a little bit better? A little bit better. Instead, you could have a transcode talker. Transcode talker, come forth. And the transcode talker has to summon to where it is pointing. I'm going to transcode talker, summon the Splash Mage back onto the fields. And now, when I summon the access code talker, it cannot be targeted. The transcode is going to protect it fully. So we're going to access code talker. If you wanted an extra pop, what you could do is you could have also summoned a Lingaribo during this to have an extra pop if you needed it. So we're going to link two, and now the access code talker is going to be smaller than normal, but it's
What have you been up to?
Oh, you know, surviving.
And how's Murphy?
Doing much better. Now that you aren't feeding her scraps all the time.
Damage intensified.
I'll make it worth your while. 4, now 3, 2, 1. Round 1. Capture the objective.
Healthy body, healthy mind. And check it. Hey. Here to assist.
pretty, but lack strength.
Oh, you think my muscles are pretty?
Pretty weak.
I'm hoping for an easy mission. Don't make this harder than it needs to be.
Just one more mission. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Attack.
say you sound for?
I'm really feeling the heat. How's it going?
Do you want a bandage for that? Come here if you want some healing.
That could have gone better.
What's the holdup?
Ça va finir. Bien espoir. Little medicine goes a long way. It's not over till it's over.
60 seconds remaining.
Now you see me? Now you don't. Tip-top shit. Listen up. That could have gone better.
It's going to be untargetable. Untargetable. Up to jammer. Always have the X code talker on the last chain link because it could not be responded to. And that's it.
Now traveling to the sun.
I'll find my own path.
Fruition comes from within, as does failure.
I take care of my friends. She's a woman. friends. Let's go. Come here. I can heal you. Let the Kitsune guide you.
Score 0-1.
Stay in sight, and I'll keep you safe.
Stay sharp. It's harder to keep you alive when you're distracted.
The spring flows anew. Shouldn't have put your head there. I'm restored. Hey. Guide you. I don't give up that easily.
Breaking me down just builds me up. That's not gonna stop me.
just like this, can't veil. So if we're under the Maxi challenge, he just draws in a Veiler. He draws into Impermanence, but he can't use it because, you know, he's got cards on the field. He's got double Impermanence in the hand. Double. Well, now you have lethal through Impermanence through the Maxi challenge. If they Maxi challenge always, I think that this is the correct play to check if I could summon 4 times, because I don't want to lose to Impermanence. Now they could Imperm me, but they can't. Got him. That's double attack with the Access Code Talker. You even have an attack with the Transcode Talker. Let's say you need to clear another monster. Maybe he summoned something in the battle phase. Maybe he whipped out, you know, who knows, a Snow. He just had enough to do Snow once. Got him. Lethal damage on...
To see other survivors. We won't last long out here. Let's get inside and figure this out. Will someone shut that racket up?
The castle has fallen. Approach at your own peril.
Messages. I hope everyone got out safe.
Does anyone know what's going on here? I'd bet these Zomniks have something to do with the Lord of the Castle. And Dr. Junkenstein, no doubt.
What are we waiting for? Let's get to the castle and chop that doctor to bits.
Set off toward the castle.
Don't reckon you can see this survival.
Something's clouding my sight. Can't predict much of anything right now.
Huh. Of course not. Locked. Won't get to the castle without a key.
My sight tells me it's somewhere nearby.
Who's yapping in my head?
Do yourselves a favor. Stay away from the castle, or else.
Guess we found our culprit.
Now to put a stop to her. I'll cover this area.
And I don't take kindly to people looking at me.
In 3, 2, something is coming. 1, above us.
On the ramparts, the guard shatters their prisons and rain on the heroes. From the monstrous wrath of the bride.
Targetable, 4-point combo. Let's go. Now, before I show you my deck list, you could just type in Salem, any card you want to look up that would be using the Salman Grade deck. Usage stats, we got the Salman Grade deck right here. Is it doing well in tournaments? Oh, we got some tournament versions. So here you go. Here's the breakdown of how it's normally being played, tournament and non-tournaments. You can copy this, and then this is what I decided to play. This is what I am enjoying. The structured deck is worth it. Definitely want to get structured decking and, you know, apply the point system combos that I was talking about to get your turn 1 Heat Soul with the Wolf plus the Counter Trap, turn 2 Lethal with the Update Jammer and Access Code Talker, or make it untargetable if you could summon 4 times. And I really dislike Flaunderies. Triple Lancia, they can't banish their Flaunderies. Triple Drone Lockbird, they can't search with Flaunderies. Also, if you get Max Seed, they draw 1, you Drone Lockbird, they're done drawing. So it's even more anti-Maxi, anti-Flaunderies. I think Drone Lockbird's gonna really go up in usage.
Not long ago, 4 heroes. Heroes emerged from their shelters. Other survivors in the safety.
YouTube, we are in the top 16 of the meta.
These things catch us all by surprise. Glad to see other survivors. We won't last long out here. Let's get inside and figure this out.
Hey! No dying until I say so! What's keeping ya? Get me back in the fight! Someone revive that lazy rat there! Can't hear myself think with that radio blaring.
These messages. I hope everyone got out safe.
Does anyone know what's going on here? I'd bet these Zomniks have something to do with the Lord of the Castle. And Dr. Junkenstein, no doubt. What are we waiting for? Let's get to the castle and chop that doctor to bits.
The heroes set off toward the castle, and the
Don't reckon you can see us this far tonight. Something's clouding my sight. I can't predict much of anything right now. Of course not. Won't get to the castle without a key. My sight tells me it's somewhere nearby.
From my banshee friend.
Hey! Who's yapping in my head?
Do yourselves a favor. Stay away from the castle. Or else.
Guess we found our culprit.
Now to put a stop to her. Castle should be up this way.
Does anyone else feel like we're being watched?
Yeah, and I don't take kindly to people looking at me. Watch over here.
Something is coming.
Above us.
on the ramparts. The guards shattered their prisons and prey on the heroes below.
All right, it's the update. It's here. And it's here to stay. Oh my god, what is this progress? Based on your previous best trophies, your new trophies are 6,400. My previous best was 7,000 Supercell. I even have video of that.
Not long ago, 4 heroes slew the Mad Dr. Junkenstein and saved the Lord of the Castle. Tonight, the heroes emerge from their shelters, hoping to reunite the survivors in the safety of the town.
That's just embarrassing. Got you red-handed. Glad to see other survivors. We won't last long out here. Let's get inside and figure this out. Fall in on the objective.
Come over to the objective. Can't hear myself think with that radio blaring.
The castle has fallen. Approach at your own peril.
These messages. I hope everyone got out safe.
Does anyone know what's going on here? I'd bet these Zomniks have something to do with the Lord of the Castle. And Dr.
Knocked to the rank mode. Level 50, that was easy. Lock him to the trophy room. And trophies there and lock her up. That'd be so annoying if he read it out like that. So I'm gonna stop. Ooh. Level 43 and above. Does that make sense? Wouldn't I have missed out on a lot more chests? Does that make sense, chat? Well, there. Don't I deserve the other level up chests from 14 and above? You know what? It doesn't matter. $140? We're doing it. I'm making sure that the code OJ is on there. Congratulations for Arena 16. 85. No, no. I don't even need that. What?
Our tale continues in Adler's Room. A sleuth who faced more questions than answers. Not long ago, for emerge from their shelters, hoping to lead other survivors to the safety of the castle.
No dying until I say so. And stay down. Arigato. Someone, pick me up. I owe you one. It's all connected. Every beginning has an end. Coming through. I claim this land for me. Our teammates down. Thank you. Give me a hand. Fall in on the objective. Get her back up. That one's on the house.
Thanks. I'll return the favor. Glad to see other survivors. We won't last long out here. Let's get inside and figure this out.
Get over here.
Are you all hearing this? I owe you one.
This isn't my time.
These messages. I hope everyone got out safe.
Does anyone know what's going on here? I bet these Zomniks have something to do with the Lord of the Castle. And Dr. Junkenstein, no doubt. What are we waiting for? Let's get to the castle and chop that doctor to bits.
The heroes set off toward the castle, and thou spelled an ominous portent.
You're a sleuth, huh?
What case are you on? Right now? The case of what the hell's going on in this town.
Nice try, shoulder better. Door's locked. Won't get to the castle without a key.
My sight tells me it's somewhere nearby.
Over there!
And snatch the key from the hero's hand. and join the law.
I'm doing it.
Hey everyone, today I'm going to point out one small detail about each killer, focusing mainly on their visual or sound design. Let's get into it. On the trapper's left leg there are many bandages wrapped around the lower part. This is likely due to his left leg always being the one that gets clamped whenever he steps in one of his own traps. The other leg has little to no visible damage. When the Wraith swings apart, let's get into it. On the trapper's left leg there are many bandages wrapped around the lower part. This is likely due to his left leg always being the one that gets clamped whenever he steps in one of his own traps. The other leg has little to no visible damage. When the Wraith swings his weapon, you can hear the bones of Azarov's spine rattle. On the hillbilly's lower right arm, you can see some staples holding together a wound. This is likely the wound he received in his tome lore, from the police dog that bit him in the same spot. The nurse's stifled breathing could be a reference to her power, and the way she appears to steal the breath of those she kills. However, her perk Strider suggests she may simply have the condition of Strider, Strider being noisy or high-pitched breathing that occurs due to obstructed airflow through a narrow airway. Possibly her blinks require her own breath to charge, leaving her constantly wheezing for air. On the shape you can see a red handprint on the back of his left shoulder. This presumably appears after his scuffle with Lori, her blood-covered hands leaving a mark. Due to the split of the hag's arm and body pieces, as well as the bandage and what looks to be belts wrapped around this attacking arm, it's likely the arm had completely come off when her captors tore away her flesh, and it was fused back to her body with use of the hexes, explaining why it's both overgrown, a powerful weapon, and also more like a claw than a hand now, due to the hexes and their great power. The Doctor's add-ons are particularly interesting. Killer's add-ons are used to amplify their emotions in some form, giving them power, as a result of giving the entity power, which runs off of emotions. Where most other killers have add-ons that hold emotional significance, or represent important moments in their life, Doctor's is filled predominantly with files and tapes, from his work and experimentation at Larry's. This shows that his peak emotion was gained through his twisted research. The only things that invigorate him are his experiments, as well as his tools, and maybe a bit of chess. I think weirdly his add-ons are a great way to show just how cold, calculated, and messed up this guy is. The Huntress wears military-style belts, specifically from the soldiers she killed after they entered the Red Forest. Where a sidearm would be holstered, she has a hatchet. Her two add-ons to increase her hatchet carry number, infantry belt and leather loop, also seem to both appear on her base character model. The Cannibal's in-game lobby pose is likely based on a behind-the-scenes photo from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre film. I've mentioned this one a few times now, but I think it's a cool detail still. In the Nightmare's original power, you could briefly see the face of Nancy Holbrook, the other protagonist of A Nightmare on Elm Street 2010. This is not visible in-game however, as Freddy no longer has the ability to pull survivors into the dream world. You can see it within the reveal trailer still though. The pig growls when she does an ambush attack. This seems to be a reference to the scene from the first Saw, where Amanda kidnaps someone with a growl-like sound effect playing. It seems this sound effect was incorporated into Amanda in the realm, as a sound she could simply create, as she replicates it after each ambush. The clown's jacket buttons have a small face on them. It could possibly be a lion or something, a lion tamer being a common circus act. As it's mentioned to be a stolen ringmaster's jacket, it could simply be that this circus's ringmaster's main
who dealt in death and cadavers. Not long ago, 4 heroes slew the mad Dr. Junkins